I seem to recall lots of games which had a license at the start stating that if you were playing the game outside of Japan, it was illegal. So, and that would have been around kind of like late 80s. But then they might have been left over from when it was illegal, and then maybe when did they relax those laws? When did they?
Mid-80s, the import licensing.
Yeah, so maybe they were just floating around.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a fuzzy bit in the middle when they were kind of using games which they weren't supposed to be.
I think there were probably quite a few fuzzy bits somehow.
Yeah, because I can't imagine there'd be that much policing. You know.
quickly,
I guess
Simon, ask you if any of these mean anything to you, like Stephen Cooper, Aaron Bolton, Michael Boyd, Andrew Flaxman, John Perry. He was a youngster. I've seen a news thing about him. I just marked up the ones that actually had names next to them and were from New Zealand.
Oh. So one person's compiled all the stuff?
This is from the collector I'm going to see tomorrow.
Okay.
Michael
Is
Davidson.
Mark in here?
I haven't seen your own name.
No. Well, that's console stuff, isn't it?
That's SC 3000.
Yes.
Just
Sega.
Sega. Sorry.
That's a
Yeah.
Sega thing, yeah.
So you haven't got anybody with this sort of type of list?
For everything, no.
So yeah, no, we didn't. Being Commodore people, we didn't run into anybody like this.
Right.
They had their own world.
Okay.
Well, there wouldn't have been many Sega game developers anyway, because
Well, I don't know.
consoles cost a bomb to develop for, so...
Check out the list.
Yeah,
There's
that's
heaps of
no,
NZ.
that's not a console. That's a computer.
Yeah, but that's all
Oh,
titles
okay.
done for the computer.
Tape software.
Yeah.
Written by New
Yeah,
Zealand
tape
people.
cartridges.
There's a whole-
Sega home computer, I remember that.
Not
Yeah, I'm quite
cartridges,
impressed with that.
tapes.
There's a whole list
Grandstand
of-
distributed it.
Yeah,
This machine.
I
And
think
apparently, it was distributed in very few places outside Japan,
I think you'll find that
and New Zealand was one.
my favourite game was Ghosts and Goblins, and that was it was in Wizards. Second on the left as you go in after Gauntlet, and I used to go there instead of going to church. I went to church, and I used to go to church, and then my mum decided that I could go to the Spacey's partner instead, which changed my life.
Tell us about your scam with the
the mystery envelope.
mystery envelopes.
But it's quite funny because it's all tied up with my friend Warren and I used to bet money on various things when we were about 12 and 13, and we were quite competitive about playing sports at home, and we went to the racetrack and we bet money on pool and darts and Guess Who, which is it Eric? No, Bang Bang Bang. But anyway. And mystery envelopes, we were right in there. Okay, mystery envelopes. So, King's High School, Dunedin, 1987. Basically what happens is they have a once a year fundraiser where the kids are asked to go out and sell mystery envelopes on the street from 8 a.m, 7 a.m, even earlier when people are arriving for work till late afternoon. And the prizes are usually you either don't get a prize or you get something kind of crappy, like maybe a gardening voucher or some turtle wax with this voucher or something. And but one of them was $2 worth of free credits at Wizards. So the mystery envelopes were $1. So I realised, maybe after talking to my friend Warren, that if you held these envelopes up to the light, you could actually see the prize inside. Now, because we were all given places we had to go in the morning at 8 o'clock to kick off, we didn't go to school first, we were given the envelopes the night before. So I took home my 100 or 30 envelopes, 100 probably, and sat down in front of a bedside lamp and went through them all, finding the ones that were Wizards, $2 Wizards one, which, of course, I brought out of my own pocket money. And then merrily went into Wizards, reclaimed my bundles of 20-cent pieces, and walked out, 100% profit. Great days. Excellent stuff.
How do you live with yourself?
Awesome. The amount I made was only probably only about 7 envelopes. So I probably made
$7.
$7 or $10 or something.
What did Warren say to that? Was he doing the same thing?
He might have been. Yeah. We were.
That was the cool thing. Instead of, you buy games magazines now and they have CDs or DVDs on the cover, like in plastic attached to the magazine. In those days they had they just had the source code. Like they printed the source code in BASIC, and you'd type it in. So they'd have a couple of pages of the code for a game. I mean, it would be a sample, it would be a little, or a little crappy little thing or something, but I can't remember. It would take a bit of research because I can't remember. But
like a graphics program or something like that.
Well, something really simple, like some sort of simple little game or some simple little, thing.
And did you type them in?
Yeah, it was. I'm sure it was in magazines. Instead of giving you a disc of a game, they'd give you some source code, as a demo or something. I don't know. I'm sure. I don't. Maybe I'm just dreaming it, but I just remember that.
No, I've found some examples of Sega magazines that have source code for games and graphics demos.
there was a computer option at school later, like in high school, but I didn't take that because I had too many other subjects I had to do. So, and I just I stopped playing games kind of from around about the age of 13, I think.
Why?
Altogether.
Why do you think?
Because the computer was old and it didn't, it didn't play. I mean, the games were, they didn't make games for the computer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they only made games for the computer for a couple of years, really. 2 or 3 years. And I didn't have access to a computer.
Mm-hmm. Was it okay for girls to be interested in computers?
It was, because it was a luxury item.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, my family's got a computer. If you could print out your assignment on, a dot instead of writing out your assignment, your essay, if it got printed out in a dot, you call them projects. If it got printed out on your parents' dot matrix printer, that was like you're rich or something, so. And if it was one of those early laser printers, then you
that really made it.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
But that was my high school where people were rich. I mean, definitely more boys seem to have got hold of computers than girls. I remember a friend, a boyfriend, this is when I was 20, telling me that his twin sister and him, for their birthday, he got a computer and she got a dog, and people, and I've heard about, girls, having to fight, girls have to fight for attention in the classroom. They have to fight to get on the computer at home. That's sort of, they used to, and on the console, and I think a lot of, and there was I didn't really know anyone who had the early game consoles like the Ataris and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember. I just know a lot of my female friends who I know now, Australian ones who did. So, and people say that consoles were more girl friendly or something. I don't know. I mean, they were.
So maybe they were, you're saying, but your circle was mostly computer rather than console oriented.
Because it would be the parents.
It's so funny. It's gonna It's so funny. It's got a recommendation. Please do not stake credits on the actual thing. That's really nice.
Yeah, I find this really odd because not all of them have it. And I spoke to the printer who made these, who bought the company who made them. Like the early ones don't have it. But and he had no idea why that would be. I thought it might have been something to do with the mechanism. Maybe it jammed or. Because I mean, why would they care if you were sticking lots of coins in a machine?
Because if you're someone who keeps playing all the time, you take much longer for your game to be over. Whereas someone else wanting to have a game might just die quickly. They get more money for it.
That's a good point. How did you get into writing games?
They started at Selwyn College and they had Apple II computers in their computer room.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been way back in 85, 86.
Mm-hmm.
They let us take them home on the weekends. You could book them out. So it was pretty amazing that personal computers had just arrived and we were allowed to take them home. So my big brother, even before I got to high school, was bringing them home.
Mm-hmm.
And then we used to write games because we didn't have too many. The piracy in schools hadn't started, so people had to write their own games. So there was a period of about 2 years where everybody at school wrote their own games, and we'd all be playing these little basic games that we wrote. So that was the start, and then the sort of piracy started, and everybody started playing games because the discs, you just got a copy of an Apple II game and you could put it in, and disk drives meant that. That age of recording what you'd done on a cassette cartridge, and that was a sort of golden age for sort of people getting into game design, which is probably not available these days because the games are so bloody good that there's not much reason for you to want to hack a little game together yourself for your own enjoyment. That's how it started.
Was there a big local scene of Commodore
Yeah,
users?
we weren't really
User
those
user
user
group
group
sort of
meetings,
guys,
but they were kind of weird. They were like church.
Yeah, and
The
there's a lot of
group would
piracy
be at the
going
back
on.
doing piracy, copying discs, and the main people who were worshipping the things stood up the front and talk about
They
all
were
sorts
more
of
sort of
crap.
users.
But it was it had a
programmers,
Linux, it had a Linuxy environment that drew that sort of geeky thing that really had nothing to do with the video game side. So there was always sort of systemsy people using the thing for games and people using it for boring stuff.
So there wasn't a lot of game writing and programming going on
a lot
the
more
Commodore.
video production was more its big thing in New Zealand, I would think.
Right.
Don't
And we're
know.
talking the C64?
Oh no, that was.
Or are we talking
that was a
earlier?
pure, no, I'm talking. I don't know. Not from my view. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to comment.
Right.
No, I think people got into the C64 for a wide variety of reasons. Mainly just because they were interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's the user groups. We only went to a couple really.
Yeah.
Even Amiga as well. But they were just people showing each other their latest software and it's neat how you can do this or something. But we spent far more time, I guess, at home or at friends' house learning how to program them and making little games and experimenting with them. And
Where did you learn that? How do you learn how to program?
It was much easier in those days because you turn on a computer and you basically had to program. That was all you could really do. So the first thing you had to do was the command to load a program and then run it.
You've learnt two commands, load and run, and you go from there.
And the manual that came with those early computers would have, in the back of it would have a hardware diagram. It'd have all the highly technical machine code stuff at the back, all in a book about that big, everything you could possibly need to know about it. So there was not, nowadays, if you want to find out something about computers, you spend a week on the internet and still not find it, kind of
It'd
thing.
be a bit like with a mechanic, like if you have an old car, you can buy one of those books. You can pretty much take cars to bits and put them back together again with one of those books. But there's no way you could do that now with new cars and computers. It's a bit like the same. You can get a book that actually tells you everything, so you can teach yourself.
That's about the right analogy, because I mean they haven't changed, but they're just the complexity and the crap they stick on top, and you know the software in there. Like there's very little software in the early computers because they had such little memory to run it in. But nowadays it's an overwhelming amount of software involved in any programming you do.
Yeah, a lot of it is in the way of what you're trying to do. So makes it hard.
So they're just easier because I guess they're simpler and more upfront, and you know the information that you needed came with it, kind of thing. I don't think Windows even comes with a programming language, does it? I mean,
It used to, because
it used to come with QBasic. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of one of the differences there.
My parents got a BBC Master, which was after the BBC B, which was quite popular. No one's heard of the BBC Master because it was slightly after that, and no one bought one. And my friends had Commodore 64s and Amstrads and that sort of thing. So, and I remember that it was I remember my parents saying, well, we can either get a microwave, a video recorder, or a computer. Like those are the luxury items. Like those are the new luxury items. Like if you wanted to be an up and coming sort of household, you'd get those things or one of them. So we chose a computer. But it was about $3,000 or something outrageously expensive.
Wow.
But the annoying thing was having a BBC. Like everyone, basically the most common popular computer at the time was the Commodore 64, and everyone had a Commodore 64, and they talked about Commodore 64 games, and I couldn't talk about Commodore 64 games because I didn't play them, and so I was a total nerd because I didn't have Commodore 64, I had the BBC.
Do you miss your BBC? Do you miss those old computers, or are you thoroughly glad that they're gone?
I miss the I miss the way it forced you to learn, because you had to learn. You couldn't really do much with computers back then unless you didn't learn a bit of code. Like, it was. I mean, you do really dumb, primitive things, but there was. In those days, people they bought games and they played games, but the coolest thing was to write stuff yourself. And these days, there's so many things you can do on computers, you just don't have time to mess around with. It's too aggravating. And it's just too aggravating. Whereas in those days, you bought a computer and you bought a book on how to program it. And there was only one way you could do it. And if you didn't do it, then what's the point of having a computer? Because it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything for you. So, old people in positions of bureaucratic power who don't use computers, who just assume that you give a computer to a child and then it becomes a computer programmer, as if programming is the same as using a computer. Whereas in the old days it used to be, kind of, almost, To use a computer, you had to be a programmer, but then it got more it's separated. You know, it's so much more that you can do, and there's so, and the, you know, you can do a lot, but it's so easy not to do that stuff. Like it's just there's so much stuff that, you know, turn it on, use your word processor, load up some games. Like there's a whole world of stuff, lots more stuff you can do now, and ways to access the computer and make it do cool things as a, you know, that you couldn't, that no one could dream of before. Like, you know, make little amazing things. Yeah. But it's just so overwhelming that why would most people do that? They use computers for work now. And you didn't used to use, you know, people's home PCs, like they use for like writing their CV and doing worky things, like use it as a communication portal and all that, you know. Whereas computers in the 80s, well, when I was a kid, it was a luxury item for having fun, you know. Like you could, okay, well, we bought a BBC because we thought we could also have some, you know, educational software for like learning French or something. But like it wasn't something you have in your house because you need a computer, like you need a mobile phone or something, and you do a bit of work on it as well. And you know, it was definitely a fun. It was definitely a toy. It was definitely more a. It was a toy. It was far more a toy than it is now. People are like, oh God, I spend so much time on my computer, in front of a computer. I go home and I don't want to spend any more time. Whereas back then it was like some cool novelty Ferrari. It was like a Ferrari or something. Like it was a Sunday drive sort of. You know, it was a luxury car you drive on a Sunday, not a commuter vehicle that you sit in traffic jams every day with, you know.
That's a really nice analogy. So tell us about the arcades where you lived.
Well, there was official arcades, and then there was kind of substitute arcades, which were fish and chip shops. Do you want me to talk about that? Yeah. Well, Hillside Road was the fish and chip capital of Dunedin. It was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 shops in Hillside Road. And each one would have, well, at least a couple of video games. Some of them had maybe, there was one that had about 5 or 6. The video games were way more popular than pinball in these places. They're all 20 cents, chips were 60 cents. I remember games going up to 40 cents, and that was like, whoa. And yeah, you would go along to play the game enthusiastically after school, put your 20 in the corner and wait breathlessly until your turn came.
Was it close to your school?
It was pretty close to school, and some people would go play Spaceys at lunchtime.
And they were allowed to?
No, you weren't allowed to play Spaceys at lunchtime.
Not part of the school curriculum?
No, not quite. I like this. Please do not stack credits.
Do you have any idea what that means?
Well, it can mean a couple of things. You know, if you wanted to make sure that you were playing the game for ages, you'd just stick in like, you know, $2 worth of 20s, so you had all these credits in there, so nobody else could get on the game. Plus, you know, you'd be playing and then somebody who wanted to play would just stick a 20-cent piece up on the bottom corner of the screen. You know, you had the flat panel where the buttons were and stuff, and then going up was the screen, and the 20 cents would be jammed into the corner, and people would just stick a 20 in there, and maybe other people would as well. And so, you know, you'd see there's like, you know, 6 people waiting, so you wouldn't bother waiting around to play the game because you knew there's people in front of you.
Okay.
And also meant you had to get off when you were finished if somebody else was Just waiting.
Cool. I wondered about the do not stack credits in terms of, did that bugger up the mechanism, or was it just like, why did they start? Because they don't all have that on them, but maybe they at one point realised it was jamming the mechanism, or because why would the distributor care, or the manufacturer care if kids were sticking lots of money in the machine?
Unless there was some way of tripping it into giving you endless credits. I think when you turn the machine on at the wall, you got a free game straight away. Which always had me intrigued, you know. Maybe you could switch it on and off at the wall and get a free game.
So the Commodore software writing scene that you guys were involved in, was there swapping going on of programs? How did you actually distribute the games that you wrote and the programs that you wrote to your mate? Did you whack it on a tape?
Yeah, it was just
It's all tapes.
There's
There's
a copy of
days.
tapes.
One for 20.
I mean, some people get involved with marketing campaigns that involve photocopying rabbits and putting them on the school notice board with Sibley's games are great value or something. So yeah,
wasn't really me.
we were doing those little enterprise sort of schemes. We had them go. Well, there were a couple of guys I remember.
Oh, we used to go around Sherry used to go around computer stores
and
with a little plastic bag with a photo.
Yeah, I did a bit of that too.
Sell it for 50 a pop or something
We
like
used
that.
to look, yeah,
50
so
cents,
we get
$50.
$50. Yeah.
$50 for a program?
Yeah.
What? So tell me about this. What program? What kind of a program was it?
That was
A game?
yeah. Donkey Kong and Star Walk were the two I remember. I mean, we used to write tapes of 20 games or something, and you'd give them to all your friends, and every now and then you'd put on a lot of effort and come up with one, and wanted to say it would be fun to try and sell it to a shop, and you try that. And it did quite well. It wasn't very enjoyable. It wasn't as fun as programming, so I didn't really follow it up. Kind of thing.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
And someone did cover artwork.
There you go, first published software. You must have got them before anybody else.
From 1984.
Wow.
So yeah, we flogged that to a few shops.
You can have
That eventually got
in your museum.
Yeah, gotcha.
bought by a guy running something called Kiwi Computers, who sold it in America, and it paid for a 64 disk drive. Yeah.
Wow. So these are the instructions?
Yeah. Your dad used to work at a photography company, so we got I drew the original of the old Letraset and Twink. And he just ran off heaps of them, probably at great cost.
Excellent. You must have been right proud.
Sort of. I mean, it was all done in a bit of a void, so you didn't really know. There's no one telling you good or bad.
Do you recognise this?
Yeah, they all kind of look familiar. All of them so far.
They're
That's it. That's a game that I used to play lots, Dragon Ninja.
yeah.
And I made a clone of that at one point, so like an SD graphics clone. Yeah.
Do these still work?
I've lost all of them except for my great finale in computer programming history, Castle Skull, which I've still got other
that where
I
you learnt to
tried-
program?
Huh?
Is that the system
Well,
you learnt to program in?
from in BASIC, which is the language where that goes 10 print hello, 20 go to 10, and spawned
The whole screen of hellos.
Well, yes, and really bad T-shirts 20 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that's where I learnt to use the very extremely useful flow control statement go to, which is infamous. It's, programmer. If you programmers will know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I didn't know anything about graphics, so I wrote a tic-tac-toe game in ASCII because I didn't.
Cool.
I knew how to draw lines. I drew lines and I used ASCII characters and I made a tic-tac-toe, and I thought that was very, very clever because I worked out, because I thought my computer AI was very, very clever because the computer would always draw or win. It was impossible for my computer to lose. And I thought that was very clever for a few years until I realized that everyone knew that.
Well, there was one game which I managed to play for. I seem to recollect it was 2 hours on like 60 cents. 3 guys. It was a wrestling game. And I pretty much just it was like training. Went up and played this game after school every day. And just evolved this one wrestling move. There's like 5 guys you've got to beat who all increase in strength as you get better and better after each round when you beat each person. And the 3rd guy was very hard. There was only one move that could beat him. So for about 3 minutes he just did this tricky manoeuvre on the buttons. And you get down and you elbow him again. And just elbow, and you forget all the other things. Just elbow. And if you let him hit you once, then pretty much he was going to go and your pulverized, it was all over, and you had the distress of having to start again. So I've got the high score on that a few times.
As I said, used to go to the doghouse. I remember going to the doghouse when I was in Christchurch, and notably would go up to choir schools and to do there's a Southern Choirs or 3 choirs thing, 3 choirs festival imitating the British 3 choirs, and the years that happened in Christchurch. I remember going over there a number of times, often, as I was saying, between the rehearsal, choir practice for 3 hours, and then there'd be a 2-hour break before Evensong, whatever, Happy Back Evensong. So the 2 hours to go hang around in the city and go to the doghouse and kind of eat hot chips and play. And the thing was packed, 2 stories of all these games, and yeah, it's cool. And I remember this thing of doghouse being a rough place, but I never felt that, and it's just a place where lots of video games. But then Christchurch, in the city, Christchurch is a kind of rough place, so it just kind of fitted in with the.
So when was this?
That would be maybe like 82, that kind of thing.
And there were lots of video games.
Yeah,
and
there's
not
like
just
1.5
the mechanical
stories.
ones.
Yeah, and we do have stories like things like Tank 2 and Tank 4, and all the kind of probably 8 Space Invaders, and there'll be some Defender, and I don't know. And then there, after Defender, there was a real explosion of all kinds of different games of chase the monsters around the labyrinth, or maze type games, or kind of I guess why they tried out different things to see what worked.
And what's with the 2 story? No,
They
this is
had a
somewhere else.
mezzanine,
This
they
is
had a
Auckland, I
mezzanine,
think.
or this is that.
These are from Arms Vestra.
Okay.
They had a mezzanine, did they, in the dog?
Yeah, they had a mezzanine. They had one and a half floors.
And was it
And-
still themed along American
I don't know.
fast food?
Possibly had on the outside, but basically it's just a place packed with video games and you could buy fish and chips and stuff that. It's really captured the and also the social space
That's
that
right.
developed around it. You know, like you'd see young kids would hang out with their kind of 13-year-old, 14-year-olds would hang out with their 13-year-old girlfriends. And it's just a space, and you just go and do stuff, and you need a there's in today as opposed to like say in the 30s or 40s. There's not, for young kids of this age especially, and older kids, there's not really modes to like cruise where you can just kind of hang out with other kids. You can go to school, but this is a good place where you just hang out and you could just kind of, it's just a good place to kind of cruise. Yeah, and I was, I know there's certain types of social groups in which it was like the okay thing to do, and certain types, and because I was kind of, I was kind of there's a lot, kind of non-trouble, in a bit of a tearaway, but not a kind of trouble seeker.
Yeah.
So I hope that's right. We're seeing other video games, especially pretty young. Got arrested for being underage in a bar when I was 16. Stuff, and no one else I knew in my whole school.
You got arrested?
Yeah, for being underage in a bar, and no one I knew in my school didn't go to see games or anything.
Really?
No one. There's one 7th former. I was like on the 5th form. There's like one 7th former I'd seen. It's an amazing time at Dunedin Music with Clean and all this stuff, and it's just like, oh yeah, and you just go to the bar and just hope you don't get busted. And it's great as well. It's just something to do, and but no one else did that. No.
Wow. So you were it?
Well, no, this is just a thing I did. It wasn't really so much. I didn't really feel like I accrued any social benefit for it.
No,
It was
but
just a thing.
your mates didn't. is what I'm saying.
No, I didn't.
Wow.
They were like what you were saying. They probably would have played many video games. I remember introducing one of my friends. Like, yeah, just go and play video games for a few hours. It's like, what have you?
Really?
What do you do? I listened, couldn't believe it. I mean, just something you can do for a few hours. You get,
They
in
thought it
town
was-
and you've nothing else to do. You're going to do that.
They thought it was weird.
Well, I know you just never kind of. This is nice. The combination of pool. It's like a kid's bar. Combination of pool and these video games.